In our case, it's player Corco 300 versus Emmanuel Jimenez. I quite like the white position here. Very active king. Going to reduce a pass pawn at some point, and the opponent's king is stuck on the back rank. So, quite good looking, all things considered. Yeah, a queen is made, and white is completely winning, just needs to cut off the king with the rook. But yes, creates a queen, and this is a queen and king checkmate. Please learn your king and queen checkmates. Don't stalemate. That would be bad. But before c3, look at that. Look at that London opening by Kotoko. Done immediately. Like actually in like 1 second. Pre-moves the entire London opening. And with Emmanuel or rather, is that... Yes, it is Emmanuel with the black pieces. He seems to just have a pawn up. When did that happen? Queen's getting booted. Let's go all the way back, I guess. Calculates a bit. Yeah, there was this move, which I thought was interesting, but I don't think it works. Yeah, it doesn't. So there is Train Jumper versus Rentai. We see Train Jumper start with c4, e5, reverse Sicilian. Very common move order. Look at Train Jumper once again playing the best moves in a given position. Interestingly, e3 is whilst it's the main line, there's also g3 playing the sort of dragon setup. e4, there is an argument to be made that as good as this pawn is, it might be a bit overextended. This knight can go back, but also you can trade the bishop. I don't think that this is considered quite as topical because queen takes. But again, these pawns bit weak. You can look to undermine them with such moves as d6, and that's exactly what is played. I highly expect that this is just going to be another one of these sorts of games. So here, taking was always a decent move. There's such ideas as knight there. This I'm not so certain about. Maybe developing your knight to the center like this is a bit inaccurate. Of course, there's always takes here. If knight takes, queen takes, and then there's tension between the queens. Here you can also just play knight takes. Jumping in here, attacking the queen is not a bad move. Is there anything... Of course, there's the check here, queen takes here, and then it's you ruin your pawn structure on the king side, and in fact, it might be a little better for white there. Can take in the center, you've recovered your pawn structure, you're not so worried about c takes because just play bishop here, castle, and you're quite happy. But bishop there doesn't work because the knight's still there, so maybe b3, bishop to b2. Yeah, and there's this position that I saw here, obviously. If queen takes, pawn takes. I'm not so certain. Welcome, Murphs. Thank you for being here. This is an interesting move. To play g takes first, keeping the queens on the board. Obviously, it damages the structure here, but this queen is still hit. Where does the queen go? Honestly, queen g3 might not be a bad move. That walks into this, but obviously that hangs a rook. So queen g3 doesn't look like a bad move to me. Obviously, again, with the knight geometry, if you have a diagonal like this, then it will take multiple moves to be able to attack the queen. It will take 3 moves to attack the queen like that. So queen g3, not a bad move. Lots of things available there. But trend jumper thinking here might be looking for a tactic. I don't see one myself. Plays queen d5. I'm not so certain about this because obviously that just takes and then the queens look at each other. You might lose your right to castle, but well, it's not so terrible. Obviously, there's actually some ideas here. Bishop d7, or even queen e7 here, and that's an interesting idea. But we'll have to see because it's not so simple. I mean, it's never simple, but you know. So yeah, Rentai taking his time here, thinking, what can I play that doesn't, you know, weaken the position too much? Yeah, bishop e6 here, attacking the queen. Queen takes on b7. You have to remember the continuity there. There's such potential moves as something like rook b8, and then arguing that this pressure is quite decent, but it depends. It depends a lot. And in fact, maybe bishop takes or knight takes here is actually good. In fact, I would say that bishop takes is probably the best move. But d takes c5, and Rentai is stuck with 4 separate pawn islands. This looks awful for Rentai. He can't castle either side. And with a pretty open center, all train jumper needs to do is play bishop e2, castle, and he'll be very, very happy with this position. So let's see here. How does train jumper play this? Because, as I said, there's always the idea of this. This queen isn't getting trapped anytime soon. It always has access to this square. But b3, looking bishop b2, might trade off this knight in the center. That's quite strong. But, you know, there's always moves like f4 here, just kicking it out in the first place. Of course, f4 might walk into knight to g4, but then h3, and it's not so simple. I mean, this pawn isn't hanging for now, but it might in the future if this bishop moves, so you have to be cerebral about that. Both players were 7 minutes 20 on the clock. We'll have to see. We'll have to see. Castles by Rentai. I'm not certain I like that move, but to be quite fair, when you have two bishops, there's not much you can do about attacking this side of the board when your queen is over here. Of course, h4, h5, g4, g5, that sort of thing is an idea. And in fact, it was quite interesting because in the Champions Chess Tour and, or rather the Eppings Masters, I believe there was some g4, rook g1 move by either Pragnananda or Gukesh or one of those, maybe Arjun Erigaisi, one of the Indian, grandmasters playing g4 and rook g1, just looking to get a strong attack, and that would be a very strong attack indeed. But choosing to play bishop a3 instead, targeting this weak pawn, which is pinned to this rook. There's all sorts of moves here. Rook d1. Trump IRL chess would be very fun. When I come up for Smash, I am getting my custom chessboard in from my friend in New South Wales. So here there's the idea rook d1, but of course rook b8 comes if takes, white is up the piece. So rook b8 doesn't actually work. But if rook b8, rook here, or rather rook here, rook b8, here, 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 yeah, it does work after that. When Smash, July 1st, 2nd, I believe. This queen might be stuck in a pretty bad spot, but actually, rook d1 and then takes this pawn, and then, yeah, so rook d1, rook here takes this pawn. This pawn is still hanging, but more importantly, at the very least, there's a draw. But actually, the queen can weasel its way down and have some pressure. Long castles here, fair move. But here, it's a bit scary. c6, not entirely certain that's a good move. Obviously takes. This is a good move, yeah, bishop takes, because this is pinned. But you have to be cerebral. You can take this, because if you lose the queen, you can take the queen back. So here, Rentai should be thinking about the fact that this counterattacks here, yeah, and Train Jumper might win a queen, but he loses the queen afterwards, and it's actually Rentai who comes up a piece in this position. Where is Smash moves? It's in Sydney. So queen takes c6 instead. Obviously that allows the black queen to move around a bit. This defends the knight. This makes some sort of move. This counterattacks the queen, also loses the knight. You have to move the knight or else it hangs. 3 pawns for the piece though. And when white has so many of them, it's a very nice position. Here there is trying to see what kind of potential attack there is for white. You have to be careful because this is the threat of infiltration, followed by bishop here, and these laser beam you down.